Howdy, gang. Welcome. So, two things. One is, gosh, there's pillars, so it's hard to see everybody. You know what I'll do? I'll make sure to wander. Wandering without a wireless mic, dangerous. So two things. One, this is usually my REM sleep time. For those of you who don't know me or work with me, I am a night owl. I typically get most of my work done between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. and then, yeah, my alarm's going off in like 15 minutes. I was really honored that David and Luce and folks reached out and thrilled to be here. The second thing is, traditionally, probably if you've seen me speak before, I almost always have slides, and lots of them. And I like to jump around and wildly gesticulate at things and show you weird things about Google that you can use to rank higher in them. I'm not going to do that today. Today, David and I chatted over email about, well, specifically about these ideas of risk and transparency. And so I'm going to tell a couple of very personal stories today about myself and about Moz. For those of you who aren't familiar today, Moz is about people in downtown Seattle, probably 12, 15 blocks from here. There's a few Mozers in the audience, actually. And Moz has 5 different products, I think almost 30,000 customers across those, doing at a revenue run rate a little over $40 million a year, which all sound pretty exciting. They sound good. Even to me, I'm very, very, very self-critical. They sound good even to me. But this has not always been the case. So in 2001, I dropped out of school. I got in a fight with my dad, and one of several fights over the years. Got in a fight with my dad. He stopped paying for college for a couple quarters. And actually, you'll be proud of me. I was working at the Wizards of the Coast Game Center on University Way. I was making $4.75 an hour. I would not accept their minimum of $4.55. I was like, no, I'm getting this 20-cent bump. This is my first negotiation. And I was buying Pokemon cards with my employee discount and reselling them on Craigslist and eBay to people around the country, like, desperate moms and dads whose kids really, really wanted Pokemon cards. And well, mostly the Pokemon cards and a little bit the $4.75 an hour salary allowed me to cover my next quarter and a half. But after that, I kind of came to the realization that, well, two things. One, I didn't want to go to class anymore. That was pretty evident from my grades. And two, that I didn't feel like I was getting my money's worth. So I dropped out. I started working with my mom, Jillian, who some of you may know from the Seattle scene. Jillian had started a marketing consulting company in 1981. So she'd been running it for 20 years. Moz is like the oldest fucking startup in Seattle by, well, if Microsoft counts, they were like slightly predating us, but otherwise. So Jillian started this company, and then her clients started needing websites, and so I built websites, got into SEO a little bit. But we were terrible at this. We were really, truly terrible at the consulting and web design and development business. Not the process and the work, but the business end of it. One of the nice things about consulting, historically, typically, from a business perspective, is a consultancy allows you to have very low startup costs, right? It's just you, so it's just whatever you cost, and then like your computer, right? And then you don't need a bunch of investment capital. Well, we thought we needed a really nice office, right? So that when people came and visited, they would want to work with us. And we thought we needed lots of marketing and advertising for ourselves. And we kept trying to hire people who were expensive for us, not expensive overall. That didn't work out. Yeah, we spent a lot of money on dumb things. We spent money on booths at conferences hoping to get clients. None of it went particularly well. So when I started working with Jillian, she had maybe around a little under $20,000 in debt from the business, which is not bad. That's fine. It's whatever. Over the next 3 years, that number went to almost $150,000, which is a little bit scary. And in 2000, must have been the end of 2004, we stopped being able to make minimum payments on our debt. I don't know if you know what happens then, but the banks and credit card companies basically adopt the Mr. Burns statement. That it's not fun. Within 6 months, we had $500,000 of debt, right? Because the penalties and then the interest rate spikes up and all this kind of thing. So in your head, I want you to put yourself in our shoes. You have $500,000 of debt. You have a consulting company. There's not really a company. Like, you can change the name tomorrow, keep doing the work. So what do? Bankruptcy, right? You declare bankruptcy. That is like the smart, intelligent, normal thing to do. And why didn't Rand and Jillian declare bankruptcy? Well, this goes to transparency. This goes to, for folks who know me and know why I'm so passionate about transparency, this goes back to a big problem in my life and my family for many, many years, and that is my mom and dad, who were married, still married. My mom never told my dad that she had any debt. In fact, sometimes she would bring home a paycheck when he would get upset that, just to, not that we had the money, right? It would just be like, well, take this off the credit card and bring it home so that it looks like I'm making money at work. I mean, it's hard for me not to pass judgment. I feel like I have a wonderful, amazing marriage with my wife, Geraldine. If one of us did that to the other one, that's just insane. That is not a relationship. I don't know what's going on with them, but whatever it is, we couldn't declare bankruptcy, right? Because then my dad would find out, and then my mom thought they would get divorced, right? Like, he'll leave me, he'll break up the family, the kids. My brother and sister are 5 and 11 years younger than me. So at the time, one of them was still in college, one of them was still in high school. So not an option. And as a result, the result is amazing, right? The result was we just put our heads down and tried to figure something out. I had started this blog called SEO Moz. That started attracting some attention. And then, basically we shut down the old company and switched over to SEO Moz entirely, which today is Moz. Did SEO consulting, found some clients who actually paid us, did some pretty remarkable work. We're able to actually, get some high rankings on Google and charge decent money. And then my mom would call up the credit card companies and say, hey, we owe you 50 grand, but the initial debt was only $6,000. How about, instead of you selling it to collections, we'll give you 6 grand. And she did that for most of them, with a few exceptions. There was one day she wasn't in the office. It was just me and Matt. We had moved out of our office. Like, we had to flee the office tower we were in. I mean, flee, like, Matt and I had to recruit this gay couple who had like huge arms, Marshall and Todd, and Marshall had a pickup truck, and so we went over to the office on the weekend, and I know, right, like, huge gay guy with a pickup truck, and he's awesome. And then, like, we were unloading all the furniture, and we almost got caught by the security guard, and anyway, super shitty times, but they're over. And then we moved into, do you know where, what's it called now? The Sundance Theater is in the University District. So there's an office space above that. It's like a shared office space. There's a Planned Parenthood in there, and then a few other like consulting firms. So because there's a Planned Parenthood in there, you get bomb threats all the time, because people are horrible. And then you could hear all the movies below. So just as Chewbacca was screaming, this is when one of the Star Wars was out, this guy, this like walking stereotype of a debt collector, walks into the office, like, hairy chest, gold chains, like overweight, but in a way that you know he could still kick your ass. You know what I'm talking about? So this guy comes in, he's like, ran Fishkin. And I look up, Matt kind of turns around. Where is he? I look at him and I'm like, I don't know, man. It actually worked. Like he left. And so I picked up some groceries and I walked home and I went to Geraldine's apartment. I had no credit. Most of the credit cards and all that stuff was in my name so that my mom could keep it hidden from my dad. I know, don't do this. Like, just don't. What do you? Anyway, I get home. I put the groceries away. Geraldine's not home yet. Like, she's working. She has a real job. I think I was at Starbucks corporate at the time. She was paying our rent and all our bills because I had no paycheck. She did that for years. And I hear a knock on the door. I'm like, oh, Geraldine is at the door and she just needs something. I open the door and it's that guy. It's the debt collector. And I had like that same sweat that you break into in high school when you know you're about to get beaten up. I mean, this guy wasn't actually going to beat me up because then I think I could sue him or something. But he handed me a stack of papers and he said, "You're pretty good today, kid." Like, I bought that. And then he said, "Rand Fishkin, you've been served." And dropped a stack of papers that I didn't even bother reading. I didn't open the envelope. I just brought it to the office and handed it to my mom the next day and was like, I don't know what to do. It was a dark, shitty time, and it existed for two reasons, right? It existed because we did a poor job of understanding the business model. Like, we did not understand how consulting was supposed to work. We didn't understand what could actually get us clients in business. We made investments in a poor way. And it existed, right? And all of that is okay. That could have been just a learning experience where we declared bankruptcy, and then 7 years later, our, credit would have been relatively fine. Like, the United States is wonderful for having, you don't go to jail anymore when you declare bankruptcy, right? They don't put you in debtor's prison. We could have just taken another shot. But we couldn't, and we didn't because of these lies, right? Because of this untruth. But my dad did not find out about this debt until 2 or 3 years ago. Thankfully, at a time when he had stopped talking to me. So I don't know how it went, but my little brother said it was a shit show, which I totally believe. All right, so I'm gonna fast forward a few years. Moz turns from an SEO consulting company into an SEO software company. By accident, mostly by accident. We'd built some tools for our own clients. We wanted to share them out there. We launched them. I don't know, Kane, if you maybe remember those days, possibly, like 2007, or early set of tools. It was like you could PayPal us $30 and then get access to these tools. It was pretty amateur hour. But that started taking off. Michelle Goldberg from Ignition Partners reached out to me, emailed me, and said, "Hey, this looks like an interesting business, interesting space. We would love to, get together and chat more." I Googled venture capital, so I didn't know what the hell that was. I'm telling you, like, amateur hour, and had a few lunches with her. She decided it was a really interesting business and invested. I don't know what she saw or what she believed in this, ragtag team, but it turned out, hopefully, it's going to turn into a good investment for her. And she really helped, upgrade us over the next few years. Now, in 2007, I think we did $400,000 in revenue on our software package. The next year, 2008, it went to, I think, right around 1.1 million, then 3.1, then 5.7, then 11.4, then 21.9. That was a crazy time to be at Moz. I mean, it felt like we were just doing our job and making things go, but we had created a product that people really wanted, that they subscribed to and loved and were passionate about, that were helping them do their work. We had some problems. We had some high institutional churn rate, especially up front in the subscription model. But we had a lot of loyalty. We had a huge community. You know, we built this blog and this sort of content marketing system through transparency, right? Through me basically being pissed off at my parents for hiding secrets for forever. Google, and was like, now I'm pissed off at you. You know, because you don't want to take it out on your parents. You take it out on Google, and you're like, fuck you for hiding everything about how SEO works. I'm going to make it transparent, right? And so that anger was essentially what sort of drove the blog, right? That's why every night between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. I was writing blog posts and trying to figure this thing out and trying to reverse engineer everything they were doing. Not super successfully, but enough to make a dent, right? Enough to make a difference and build a business. It's 2012, and after a series of failed fundraisings, many of you have probably read my blog posts about failed fundraising. They're some of my most popular posts. When I write about things that I do dumb, people are like, oh man, that guy does the best dumb stuff. It's sort of an honor. So, 2012, I call Brad Feld. Brad Feld, for those of you who don't know, one of the 4 partners at Foundry Group, which many, I think, in many cities would classify as some of the best venture capitalists in the United States, especially from a founder's perspective. They're just wonderful people. I called him up because I was hoping he could help me figure out who I should be talking to. And we knew Brad because Amy, Brad's wife, is a big fan of Geraldine's, my wife's, blog. She'd been reading it for years. She saw this thing about failed fundraising on there. She clicked over. She sent the link to Brad. Brad wrote a post about it and reached out to me, and it was very, very sweet. Also scored us an $18 million funding round, which is what happened when we closed the deal with Brad. So there's a problem that many folks have. I think when you know, especially because for the 4 or 5 years previously, I'd been pitching venture capitalists and trying to raise this money, trying to do these things so that we could, you know, get to the next evolution in Moz, do a bunch of exciting things with our technology and help people understand Google better, all that kind of stuff. So this money comes in, it's amazing, it felt awesome. It took 10 days. 10 days, it was a 10-day fundraising process. My other fundraising processes took months and months, and that didn't work out. Brad was like, yeah, come to Boulder on Friday. And then Friday night we went out to dinner. He's like, yeah, we want to invest. You guys are awesome. He basically looks like the dude from The Big Lebowski. Like if any of you have met him, it's like a smart and kind version of the dude. And this money comes in. I remember Sarah, who was our chief operating officer at the time and like a longtime friend of mine, and now is Moz's CEO. Sarah sent around an email. It had a picture of a marsupial, like with its eyes insanely wide, staring at our bank balance sheet, which had gone from like 2 million to 20 million. And it was just like, oh, which is exactly how I felt. Like $20 million. That's crazy money. I don't even know what that is. So those next 6 months felt amazing, but they did something terrible. That experience made me feel like I knew what the hell I was doing. They made me feel like, you know what? Maybe you're not so bad at this. Rand, maybe you got this. Maybe you know what you're doing. And so over the next 2.5 years, 2 years, really, I basically pitched an idea to our product team and was like, I want this, build out this whole thing. It's this huge thing. I had this idea that SEO and social media and content and a bunch of other forms of non-paid marketing were all going to come together, and that we wouldn't have specialists, we'd have generalists, and they'd need to do all these things all in one place. And so I was like, I want you to build this multi-hundred screen product, and you know, don't worry about the existing product. We'll just kind of let that float until we finish this thing. So the initial estimate was like, you know, 9 months, and then it was 1.5 years, and then it was 2 years, and it kept dragging on. It was very much, the classic engineering death march, and no customer validation. Didn't talk to customers. I was like, I know what people want. I built this whole thing. Got out of debt when we had no chance. I have this great reputation in SEO. I know what people want. Just listen to me. And as a result, we came out with a product. Well, first off, we announced that this product was going to launch finally in June of 2014. And it was the craziest marketing day I've ever seen. 100,000 people signed up for this product. Signed up to get the email, get access to it as soon as it comes out. It was insane. Moz still today only has 21,000 customers on the product that the SEO product. So 100,000 people. 6 months later, when we finally released the thing, get it out the door, 5 months in November, about 5,000 of them actually sign up, which is still not that bad, but almost all of those quit within the first 60 days. And in fact, a bunch of our customers who had been loyal, longtime customers looked at this new product and were like, no, I'm not using that. They stuck to the old one. It took us almost a year to migrate everyone over to the new one, to get the new one even decent enough to where people would migrate. And that was really, really tough. Now, I don't know about, probably a lot of you know that I wrote some posts about this also that were very popular around getting depression at this time. So if we were chatting at the beginning of 2015 or the end of 2014, and you might come up to me and say something like, if you're an SEO in particular, like, oh, Rand, really nice to meet you. Been a big fan of Moz for a long time. In fact, we're a customer of yours, and we love this particular product. And I would try and convince you that our products were shit. And that you should go to competitor X or Y, who I really thought were doing an amazing job right now, and maybe Z if you're doing this one thing. That's pretty insane behavior for SEO. You can imagine that teams. Yeah, I really want to back that guy who's thrown our whole company under the bus. That's reasonable. And so after some conversations with Brad and with Sarah, it had been a long time plan to one day make Sarah the CEO of Moz, primarily for the reason that I like to be very transparent, and public companies, which Moz sort of aspires to be, are not allowed by SEC rules to be transparent at all. So screw the SEC, I am not dealing with that. There's no way you can make me CEO of a public company, it just wouldn't work. And so the idea was that we transfer that over to Sarah. And Brad sort of was like, look, we should make this transition happen right now. We should do it immediately. And that's what we did in February of 2015. Sorry, are my years all mixed up? Yes, my years are all mixed up. Backtrack, we were in November of 2013. Now we're in February of 2014. Sarah becomes CEO of Moz. I think had some rocky first few months, but built a lot of processes. She and I had a lot of conflict around direction and involvement, and props to her. She's done an awesome job. I mean this is a real compliment. An awesome job of listening to me, but not always implementing things that I was interested in or wanted to do, or making changes that I wanted to do. Listening to me, but then ignoring my suggestions. She did a really good job of that. And that's very important. I can only imagine what it's like, right, to take over from a founding CEO and to have lots of nervousness about who you are and what you need to do and those kinds of things. I think that went as well as it has gone because Sarah and I have a very close, very open, very transparent relationship, a very different relationship than some of the ones that were problematic in the past. But one of the biggest lessons of this, so Moz's growth rate for 6 years in a row, 6 or 7 years in a row, had been 100% or more year over year. And then in 2014, that flattened out substantially. Actually, I think it was 2013, it went to 50%. 2014, it went to something like 17 or 18%. Last year, it was 22%. So you can see the impact that this product had. And things are better, like Moz has a number of products, they're all growing. This product, Moz Analytics, that's growing again as well. But that was a long, suffocating struggle and a really bad emotional hit for me. I have tied my personal identity to Moz in every way possible. Like, it is intertwined with my being. It's who I am, and that can be very hard for founders. It can be really hard for employees. You know, I remember having the realization after I'd stepped down as CEO that I could be fired. Right? So this is a good thing for me, because I think it will create empathy for me about other people. Like, I never, except for the Wizards of the Coast Game Center, and I was pretty sure I could hack that job. I have never thought, oh my God, to our finances, what would happen to Geraldine and I, what would happen to our rent, what about my grandparents that were supporting, what about her mom that were helping out? You know, you have that nightmarish realization. And so that was really, in a lot of ways, a good thing. But the central point around this, you know, is that if you are not transparent with your co-founders, with the people that you have important relationships with in your company, if you hold on to things, hold on to emotions, hold on to information, if you don't share and validate your ideas with your customers, you will experience the same pain that we have. And I think we're one of the luckiest, you know, organizations out there who've been through an experience like this. I think usually the things that we've experienced would completely sink a company. Startups are so rocky. They are so hard to hold the ship together. And we have somehow survived through all of these very, very rocky things. But we've been blessed. I don't want you to have to go through that. I want you to not feel different pain. Do other stupid stuff. Don't do the same stupid stuff that we did. Thank you very much.
Really beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. I feel like we need a few minutes to process, being the introverts that we are. Do you guys have any questions? Do you have a few minutes for Q&A?
Yeah, absolutely. If there's a question about anything with regard to the story or anything else about Moz or startups.
And if any of our folks watching on the live stream have questions, tweet us and we will pass it on. Rand, if you don't mind just repeating the questions after they are asked.
I will repeat the questions.
Excellent.
Excellent. Yeah, hi. What advice do I have for family members who are working together? Okay, so let me say a couple things. I have talked to entrepreneurs who've had very successful, very positive relationships with family members in a work context. Brothers, sisters, husbands and wives, parents. However, they are substantially in the minority. I think because of the stories that I tell and because of who I am and the fact that my mom was my co-founder, a lot of people come and talk to me about that kind of thing at events sort of all over the world. And statistically speaking, just from my experience, I would say maybe 20% give me tell me they have a very positive experience. The overwhelming majority don't. and have really, really hard times. You know, another person who talks about this pretty openly is Dharmesh Shah, who's one of the co-founders at HubSpot, and he had previously founded a company with his brother, and they had just a lot of tough times through that. I think that I would say a few things. First off, if before you begin the company, you can write down some of the, imagine together some of the most frustrating, hardest scenarios that you might face. What if you get sick and you can no longer contribute to the startup that the company that we're building together? What if we disagree on something so fundamentally that both of us are willing to walk away from the company if we don't get our way? What if you know, our parents need us and we don't have time to contribute? Who's gonna spend the most? You know, write all that stuff down, and then have a plan for each of those things. Have a plan that you agree to in advance, so that when and something will happen. It won't be any of the things that you write down. It'll be some other thing that you never imagined could happen. But when you have those kinds of plans in advance, and when you agree to them beforehand, it removes a lot of the pain of being in the moment. And everyone knows what to expect, right? You and your family members, you all know what is coming. That is something that we didn't do. I didn't share this, but when Michelle invested in Moz, in SEO Moz at the time in 2007, my mom was the CEO, right? She'd been the CEO from 1981 until, well, you know, the other company dissolved and then SEO Moz formed, and she formed it. She was the CEO. And Michelle and Ignition and Kelly Smith from Curious Office, who also invested, they were like, yeah, we will be happy to invest, but we want Rand as the CEO. And so I remember my mom and I walking in a circle around a parking lot in the U District for 4 hours. We thought it was going to be like, oh, you know, let's go walk around and we'll have a chat about like this thing. And it was a 4-hour, I didn't have a Fitbit, which really, you know, just ruined the whole thing. But thankfully I didn't know it could be done. But so about, you know, her stepping down as CEO and me taking over, it was super painful. I think you know, it's emotional. I think it felt a little insulting. I think it felt like she wasn't getting credit for all these years of work that she'd done. And I think it really sucks because it's, you know, I'm sure she felt like pride for her son, but all these struggles, right? This stuff is hard enough if it was you and random stranger that you had met a week ago building a startup. But when it's someone you've known your whole life or much of your life, it gets even tougher. So that would be my advice. It can help. Yeah, hi.
Hi, thank you so much.
Oh, no, thanks for having me.
I was wondering if you had a do-over button for your career.
Yes, please.
What would it look like?
So the question is, if I had a do-over button for my career, what would it look like? I would give a lot for a do-over button, which is weird, which sounds weird. Like I know it sounds weird. I can put myself, you know, in other folks' shoes and say like, but, you know, co-founder of this company that go back in time. In particular, there's a few things. First off, I would not have made the decision to work with family. I think that complicated and made life hard in a million ways. Second thing, bye Jenna, great to see you. I did a tiny bit of PHP coding early in my career. I would have gone to the computer science program at the University of Washington. Not knowing how to code has hobbled me for the last 15 years, and I regret it all the time. I wish I could go back in time and do that. The other thing I really wish I could do is go work at another startup, another early stage company. I don't care if it failed, fell apart, had like the worst experience ever, you know, was awful. I wish I could have seen the inside of one or two other companies before doing this myself, because you learn so much. There's so much that you don't know. There's so many unknown unknowns, things that you never know you're going to face, right? As a CEO, as a scaling up company, you know, stuff where you're like, oh, right, that can happen? And being able to see that and go through it even once, even if it's handled totally the wrong way, gives you an insight that I never had and that I wish I could have. I sincerely hope that whenever I get a chance to build startup number 2, I can take all these lessons and do a better job. It's like a video game. I think startups are a lot like a really complicated video game. And you know how the second time you play through, you're like, oh man, this time I know exactly, I know where I'm going to make this jump. I know that I'm going to pick up the fire flower over there instead of over there. And you're just better at the game. You score more points, you get further through the levels. I think startups are the same way. I completely understand. I was really pissed at it at the time, but I totally understand now why a lot of investors say, we like second-time, third-time entrepreneurs. You first-timers, let somebody else struggle with you. Yeah?
What has been the greatest challenge for your policy of radical transparency?
The question is, what has been my greatest challenge, or Moz's greatest challenge, with the concept of radical transparency? Two things. Okay, there's a company thing and a personal thing. Company-wise, I'll walk you through a phone call that I had. This was in 2012, early 2012, maybe late 2011. Pick up the phone, talking to an investor who I had scheduled a call with, and he says to me, I read your blog post about the failed fundraising. And, we really, it was a good post, but we don't feel great about being included in that stuff, and we would not like to be included in the future. So I hope I don't read about this call. So I won't tell you who he is or what his firm was, but I'll tell you that that call was not unfamiliar to me. I got plenty of those. I think that there are some folks, investors in particular, who are really not comfortable with that form of transparency. I think that likely hurt Moz's fundraising, although I'm very happy with who he did find. Will hurt our fundraising in the future again, because they're investors who they see the name Moz and they're like, no, I'm not into that. At the same time, on the flip side of that, there's something amazing about having core values, having things that you love and believe and want in your life, personally and professionally, and having that reflected in your investors, and having sort of it's almost like a filter, right, that these values provide. If you're open with, this is what I believe, this is why I believe it, this is who I want to work with, this is who I'm not working with, they self-select out, right, and you get Brad Feld instead of Sequoia. Someone else. Yeah. Zuckerberg walks in and is like, "Fuck you." So everybody knows they have a reputation. And I've pitched them multiple times. It's no fun. Oh, the personal challenge, right? So the personal challenge, I think the biggest personal challenge of transparency is the fact that you risk losing relationships that you already have. There's some. My dad would be a good example, right? He and I don't have much of a relationship these days, and a big part of that is due to early lack of transparency and then later finding out all that shit. But that's happened a little bit also with my mom. Yeah, it's happened with other folks over the years. It's really tough, right? One of the hardest things that we have to do at Moz, so we have a set of core values that are 6 called tag fee. 2 of them are transparency and empathy. And they actually have an order of operations, like a math problem. At the top, before even transparency, is empathy. And so we try and put ourselves in the shoes of other people. This is one of the reasons that we don't do like what Buffer does with radical transparency. They put all of the salaries of all the people, their employees, on their website. And that's something that Moz has chosen not to do, primarily because we had talks with lots of employees, and they were like, I don't really feel comfortable with you putting my salary, how much I make. I don't want all my friends and family members to be able to go, how much does Christine make? Oh, well, there you go. Look at that. I think you should send your grandparents a little more money this year. Like, you know, it just, but I'm just saying, right? So empathy first and then transparency second. And that's been a struggle, but I think it's an important one.
Thank you.
Yeah. Hi, yes.
My question is going to be one of those that nobody is really going to like to talk about.
I always talk about things no one likes to talk about. That's basically my whole shtick, you know? It's-
Nobody ever likes to talk about how the money gets handled.
Sure.
What did you and your mom have going on behind the scenes in the early days, whereby obviously your financials went in that direction? What would you recommend that people here know before they start a company to avoid that?
Yeah, so the question is, let me see if I'm getting it right. My mom and I, in the very early days, sort of when we were building up debt and all those kinds of things, had a bad financial situation. What was going on behind the scenes that caused that? And then what would I recommend to folks who are starting a business? The mechanics of it all. So this is where I'm going to have to apologize. Because I was so heads down in the work and because I was frankly scared and not emotionally ready and didn't understand and didn't want to understand what was going on with our finances, I can't tell you the mechanics. I really don't know. I don't know why we had so many credit cards. I don't know why we put the numbers that we put on them. I don't know why we took out this money. I'm not sure how much the rent cost at the time. I don't know, you know, what my mom was taking. I know that most of the time she wasn't taking home a salary, and then sometimes, you know, occasionally she was. I know that sometimes Matt and I don't know how many folks know, Matt Inman, who's now the Oatmeal, he and I worked together for like 5 years, you know, from 2002 to 2007. And sometimes Matt and I, like, we'd hang out a lot after work and get high before it was legal. And Matt, I remember there was a few months where it was like one of us got a paycheck, you know, and I'd be like, no, Matt, you should take it. He'd be like, no, Rand, you should take it, right? It was messed up. So I don't know the mechanics. I can't answer that. However, I would say from a financial perspective, I think one of the smartest things that you can do as an entrepreneur is if you yourself are not a great financial strategist and not someone who does a great job sort of in your personal life owning and understanding expenses and that kind of thing, find someone who does, either paid or a friend, right, or a colleague or contact. Show them your plan, get their buy-in on it, right? Get their review of it. We had no plan. I mean, maybe my mom had a plan that I never saw, but it felt like a very no plan type of situation. I think there's also some great resources out there where you can go and look at, for example, fundraising slide decks. I just saw one yesterday. I can't remember the name of it. I think it's on onboardly.com. They have like a set of a bunch of pitch decks that were very successful, and they walk you through their financials in the appendices. You can look at Maz's. You can see our financials on our website, right, in Sarah's blog posts every year, and see that kind of stuff. Make one of those, right? I think just having that plan will help very much. But I'm not an expert in this area, so I might also urge you to talk to somebody. Last question. Okay, one more. Oh, hey, how's it going?
So, thank you for being here.
Yeah.
In my mind, I'm hearing your alarm clock still going on. And to that degree, why are you a night owl? Is this a choice, or is this something that your career has forced you into?
Why am I a night owl? So I have read a bunch of stuff about night owls, and my understanding is that it appears to be genetically influenced. Not that you can't change, I think you can, but just that many people with certain genetic markers tend to be folks who like to stay up very late and wake up very late. High school is bad for that, by the way. They really need to change that. Gang, thank you so much for having me. It's really been an honor. You guys are awesome.